Another year.
Another E3 without Sony.
Hot take. I miss Sony.
It's been a pretty wild ride, these past little bits of conventions and whole events where we're supposed to see a lot about a whole bunch of companies. Apparently, Sony doesn't think they need to do that because, again, just like last year, Sony is going to be missing E3. Now, what happened last year was apparently they didn't want to showcase anything because I guess they didn't want to disappoint people. At least that's what Sean Layden said.
Yeah, he said that specifically about PSX, but I think it was kind of the same thing for E3 as well. So that's kind of a double punch whammy, right? Not only were they not at E3, but they're not at their community-driven or community-based show PSX. So again, this year, they're not going to be at E3 in 2020. GamesIndustry.biz reached out, and of course, Sony got back to them saying, after thorough evaluation, SIE, Sony Interactive Entertainment, has decided not to participate in E3 2020, said a Sony Interactive Entertainment spokesperson. We have great respect for the ESA as an organization, but we do not feel the vision of E3 2020 is the right venue for what we're focused on this year.
Yeah, I think what they're focused on this year is not trying to put themselves into competition directly against their competitors on the scene. Look, last year at E3, because Sony wasn't there, from everyone that went, they said it was kind of a little bit of a hollow event, didn't have the same impact that it used to have, and that's mostly because when one of the major players, in fact, the most major player in the game industry right now when it comes to video game consoles, Sony, not being there, not showing anything, can kind of have an influence on things. So what we are to understand right now is going into this next E3, from what Microsoft has said, they are going to E3. Nintendo is going to be at E3.
To some extent.
To some extent, we don't know exactly how much of an impact they're going to have there. But one thing we can guarantee now is just like last year, Sony is again going to miss out. Is this going to have a bad impact on
I know. And, you know, historically, it's interesting to look at Sony and E3 as a whole, because they started out with the first E3, and they had a big bang for the original PlayStation in North America back then. And we can't forget, this console generation, arguably, Sony could be where it's at right now because of their huge 2013 presentation, which we've talked about a lot, where they undercut price and they talked about game sharing, right? So they kind of owe a bit to E3, at least from some sort of perspectives. But from what I'm hearing behind the scenes, Sony has always wanted the E3 event to be more community driven, and the ESA has had problems sort of weighing, we want to serve the media focused people, but we also want to make this a community-driven thing. So that might be why Sony is sort of opting out more so recently.
I think what's going on is we're seeing a lot of conventions out there, like the expansion of PAX. There's now PAX South, PAX West, PAX East, PAX Australia. They're having a whole bunch of those all over the place, and there's a bunch of regular consumers and gamers that go to those events and have a direct impact and a direct experience with the video game companies themselves. I think those events are starting to grow a lot more because back in the old days with E3, when it originally started, most people got their news from like magazines and like the radio, and like TV and stuff like that.
And it's interesting because back then E3 was not solely video game focused. E3, it was about all electronics and entertainment media, right? The video games were still considered a bit of a niche market back then, but now it's exploded, and video games are the number one like consumable media in the world. There are, like you're talking about, there are so many conferences and conventions and so many places where people can gather and share information about games and stuff. Is something like an E3 nearly as important as it used to be? And I think we just answered that right now.
It's getting to the point where I don't know. I really don't feel... I think that E3 tried to be more of a community-focused thing one year, and it didn't work out that well. So they're trying to be more, I guess, press related, which doesn't really work.
I feel like they still don't know exactly where they're supposed to be because, like we mentioned, there's so many other ways that people can gather that they're like, well, what do we do? What do we do to be? Because they are still, it kind of sounds like the death pangs or whatever of E3, but they are still kind of video game Christmas in the summer for a lot of us geeks, right? So how do they maintain that on top of the mountain sort of thing?
Honestly, I don't know, but I can tell you one thing. I believe that Sony not showing up to E3 has less to do with the way E3 is right now and more to do with, hey, Why do we want to go there and compete directly against our competitors on the scene and pay for that ability? I mean, like, why would you do that? Right now, Sony is in the leadership role. They have the most consoles sold. They've got amazing exclusive games. Everybody's excited about the PlayStation 5 because they're still staying very silent about mostly everything of that. We did see the logo.
Yeah, we've yet to talk about that. Shane, what's your hot take on the logo?
Looks like the PlayStation 4 logo.
Yeah, it looks very much like the PlayStation 4 logo. I think, here we go.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, everyone, take in the glory that is the new logo.
Yeah.
So I think if Sony not going to E3 was a problem last year, we would have seen them trying to get their feet back into dip their toes back into the waters. I don't think it was a problem for them last year. And I think that there are a lot of huge plans moving forward. Of course, with the next console coming out this year, they're like, no, we have our own sort of events. And in fact, there are rumors coming out of, I believe, NeoGAF and 4chan as well, that we could be seeing an event or a reveal of the actual box in February.
Yeah. See, I mean, this is really how this plays out. Right now, Sony is still doing well. And because they're doing well, it kind of shows that, hey, maybe we didn't need E3 all along, or at least for the past couple of years.
Maybe it was in our hearts all along.
Right. So where it's going right now, and what we're to understand now, remember, what we're talking about here is a lot of rumor stuff, a lot of stuff that might take a grain of salt to truth there.
You're going to do this, a grain of salt? Okay.
Yeah, let's throw a grain of salt.
Okay,
so
saltine.
Basically what we're dealing with here is this. I believe that Sony's next console is so close to what Microsoft's next console is that they don't want both of those systems so close to each other in the same proximity. So what they're probably looking at right now is going, okay, if the PlayStation 5 is going to be competing against Microsoft and we really don't know everything they want to do, we don't want to have another one of those events on stage where, let's just say what happened that one year when they showed off the PlayStation 4 for the first time and showed how you traded games, that tanked Microsoft. That's a dangerous prospect, one way or the other. However that messaging flows, if one company manages to mess up the other on stage, that's millions of dollars lost.
I think assuming that Microsoft doesn't have a plan for that is not what Sony's thinking. They're like, no, I don't think we can get away with that again. I don't think we can undercut them and do some sort of meme video. They're probably ready for anything where Microsoft will be like, no, we're even cheaper than that. They will, Phil Spencer has said, we will not get caught basically with our pants down as far as price and power are concerned. So.
But I think they are going to get caught with their pants down because there's going to be no one there to de-pants
them. Right, and that's what I'm wondering. And I guess the question that we got to kind of think about right now is Microsoft being there, Xbox being huge there. Phil Spencer put out a tweet basically saying, hey, our team is going to be there and we appreciate E3. Look, our team is hard at work on E3. We look forward to sharing with all who love to play what's ahead for us. Our art form has consistently been propelled by the cross-section of creativity and technical progress. 2020 is a milestone year in that journey for Team Xbox. Hashtag Xbox E3. Hashtag E3 2020. This was right after the announcement that Sony would not have a presence at E3. So it seems like they're like, fine, you don't want to be there? We're going to just absorb all of the sort of attention at this huge trade show. And I hope it works out for them. Do you think it could work out for them?
No. Look, I like Microsoft. I like Sony. I like Nintendo. I think all these companies create really cool products, devices, and games on this stuff. But the reality of the situation is right now that Sony is on top. And wherever Sony is, other people will look at that same area. So if Microsoft shows off a bunch of stuff at E3 and Sony shows off a bunch of stuff at E3, Sony's taking their focus, their audience, and having them look in that same direction. So why would you bring your audience there if your competitor is going to be on the scene? So they're probably like, we're just going to do our own thing. Microsoft is entering E3 thinking we care about what they have to show off, when in reality, hey, you've had multiple events all over the world. You've been doing those XO events.
Inside Xbox and XO as well. Sure.
Yeah, so they've been doing a lot of those things. We just had the Game Awards where they showed off the console. I mean,
so that was the card hand as far as I'm concerned. They've shown their cards already because we've seen the box.
Yes.
Right. So what they have to show at E3. I don't know what it could be to really grab people, but it has to. It has to be just as important as something like this, especially if we get the 1-2 punch of the PS5 and its games.
So we're seeing this, like the Series X. We just saw the box. That's what they showed off. So coming up to E3, now you don't need to worry about what the box looks like, and that's not really an exciting thing anymore. The prospect there is gone. Having all that hype and built around one big event is what drives the conversation forward and keeps it building and building. But now, we also just heard that apparently the first year after the Xbox Series X comes out, there's going to be no exclusive games, at least from Microsoft's
2 years, isn't it? It's 2 years.
1 or 2.
Yeah.
I've heard varying degrees of difference.
Sure.
But at least for a while, you're not going to have any exclusive games on that platform because they're going to be available across the entire family of Xbox consoles. What's going to go on? Why would you even pay attention to E3? Whatever they show you, if it is relevant to the Series X, you're not going to be picking it up on the Series X most likely because it's going to be available on the other systems.
Yes, at least the non-hardcore gamers will likely stick with those systems for another couple of years until the Xbox Series X either becomes more famous, more popular, or the prices drop down a little bit.
I mean, when it comes to wherever Sony goes, whatever event they handle, literally they could go to the the McDonald's parking lot, bring out a stage and go, here's the PlayStation 5 and here's 5 exclusives. And there could be 10 people there, and that would still be more exciting than that was the potential of what Microsoft's going to show off at E3 this year.
That was part of the NeoGAF leak, actually. It's going to be, you're going to get a 6-piece McNugget with the... it's a free 5-piece McNugget because it is, in fact, the PlayStation 5. So we've seen, people have been sort of segueing away from E3 for a little while. And it's fun to say this. Nintendo was the leader. Once. I love Nintendo. I love you, Nintendo. But yeah, they started doing their Nintendo Directs in like 2013. And now we're talking about other conferences sort of making E3 obsolete. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the digital sort of presentations that are as well making this less relevant, E3 less relevant, because we have a Nintendo Direct. In fact, Nintendo Directs play during E3 and they get kind of mixed in with the E3 messaging, and a lot of people couple them with E3. But we also have Sony has started doing their State of Play stuff. And I'm wondering, Xbox is going to be there. Could they pull their coy, sly, sneaky thief move of like, oh, you're going to present a bunch of stuff and then they just drop a State of Play? Just digitally, that's huge and just blows their news out of the water.
No, because everyone's still paying attention to the news cycle, right? If you do that, you drive people to Microsoft's news as well.
That way, well, it doesn't have to be an explosive PS5, like just something that competes, that stirs into the pot. You want to dilute the news of your competitor at least slightly, don't you?
But I think they've already done it. I think Microsoft has already diluted the news.
They've done it themselves?
Yes, that's the thing. If Sony announces anything, even if they announce a battery pack for the PlayStation 4 controller that extends the battery by twice.
We saw them announce a button on the back of their controller, and that was huge news for a lot of people.
Right. If they announce anything, people are going to be paying attention. So as long as people are paying attention, all they have to do is let Microsoft scream into the empty void, and then Sony goes, okay, here's what you should actually care about. When we talk about those events that Microsoft has been having, where they've been taking a whole bunch of people to a place and having like this whole audience of people watching.
It's their either their EXO events or their Inside Xbox events that we've mostly felt were shells, hollow.
So they spend all this money, all this time, camera work, all this stuff. A lot of work is put into those things, and nobody pays attention. And Sony gets one voice actor to just talk over top of the sequences between trailers, and more people watch that and pay attention. They're saving so much money. It's ridiculous. Nintendo puts more effort into their Nintendo Directs, but Nintendo kind of has to do that because they have to make their older systems seem much more interesting than the current market of PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X games. What we're seeing right now, getting into the next generation, is that Microsoft and Sony are going to be competing head-to-head for power almost, but not just that, for content, exclusivity, games that you're going to be playing on their systems. Sony, has a whole bunch of exclusives and a whole bunch of stuff lined up, ready to go for their next system. Microsoft, we assume, does, but because of their announcement saying, well, you don't need to own the Series X to play the latest games, probably means that whatever these games are that are going to be coming out can still be played on the earlier systems, diluting the idea of a brand new system. So that first 2-year gap, or year gap, of this brand new console that hits the scene, you're not going to have a reason to get it. But the PlayStation you will. So PlayStation 5 is going to have a huge step on the competition. I mean, It's insane to think about things playing out this way, but all these pieces coming together show Microsoft doesn't seriously understand the concept of what goes on next generation, where more Sony is just like, this, we're going to make it work. And there's no reason to share a little bit of that spotlight with any other company.
Anyway, they are already on the rails for this E3 presentation. Microsoft, that is. There's no backing out at this point. So whatever it is they show off, it has to be explosive to the nth degree. I don't know that it's going to happen, but I'm very eager to see what happens during E3. I'm very eager to see whether or not we're actually going to get the announcement or the reveal of the PlayStation 5 next month. Or
what gets me about all the reveals we're going to see at E3. This is really important. When we talk about E3, we're literally now just talking about Microsoft and Nintendo. Nintendo, we really don't know what they're going to show off. We've heard rumors of a Switch Pro. We've heard rumors of...
Oh, gosh. You can keep going. Pikmin ports of new Metroid games, of Metroid trilogies, of, you take any of their intellectual property you haven't seen in a long time.
We really don't know what they've got in store, but we just know that something is there, at least something. When it comes to Microsoft, even if, and this is important, if Sony shows off games running on the PlayStation 5, those are PlayStation 5 games. If Microsoft shows off any games running on the Series X, unless they state that it's a Series X exclusive, it's a game that will likely run on an earlier system, meaning whatever graphics you're seeing are not going to be the same representation of the thing you're going to play at home.
And you're not being incentivized to pick up a brand new console, which is the start of a new console generation, and you have another console that we're assuming they're very heavily going to incentivize you to pick up. It's a PlayStation 5 game. It can only run there because it has these great features and great gameplay, and it looks like this.
It's risky business, folks. And like, if you think about it in terms of Halo Infinite, we're hearing about Halo Infinite being able to run on not only the original Xbox One system, so that's One, S, and X, but also on the Series X, possibly having better features and stuff like that. So think about playing those kind of games online. Series X people are going to be in their own little world that play with other Series X people, or are they going to play with all their friends on the original systems? And if that happens, imagine going online at the same time that someone's using the original Xbox One.
Yes.
The original Xbox One.
Let's keep in mind SSDs are now being involved with these new consoles and things, and there has to be some sort of parity drawn. So they're going to have to possibly like nerf these versions of games or something.
I mean, I just don't get it.
So many questions.
It's such a crazy thing. What I believe Microsoft has to do at E3 is answer everyone's questions and give good answers. Because if all they do is everything just kind of works on everything, no one is going to understand that. It's going to be crazy.
And I don't know exactly who's asking for that. I can see Microsoft's approach where it's like, well, Xbox S and X and One have been lagging behind. Let's just continue on with those consoles and incorporate Series X into that, and let's see if we can just make this one continuous thing. Like, I'm sure they want that to work. We don't see that competing against.
I can't. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's nuts, isn't it? The idea that the Xbox One could potentially be the system they move to the next generation to try and gambit. Like, I mean, you would only do this if you were the leader in the previous generation, but they're not. They're in the last place. If Sony were to do this, it would make perfect sense because people are still buying PlayStation 4.
And we're already hearing rumors and seeing patents and stuff for backwards compatibility with the PS5 going back into its legacy. So it's not like they're not dabbling with those the legacy themselves.
If the PlayStation 5 plays PlayStation 3, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 1 games, and
we're pretty sure it's PlayStation 4 confirmed at this point.
And PlayStation portable games, essentially the PlayStation 5 is a massive leap over the PlayStation 4, which is why, by the way, they didn't have any backwards compatibility in the PlayStation 4. Not because they could eventually have done it. You could have done PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games. Guys, everybody knows they could have done that. Why this happened is because they're like, you know what? Let's just wait, because when the PlayStation 5 comes out, it's going to do everything. Just like Microsoft is promising everything with the Series X, but the only difference is everything with a PlayStation is a massive library. Everything with Xbox is still Xbox.
But Xbox is going to be at E3. And what do you guys think about all this? Will they be able to convince us through their E3 presentation, that their ecosystem is the ecosystem you got to play in? Is Sony going to come up out of nowhere and showcase their new console, and everyone's going to be amazed and hop on board with them, continue to be on board with them?
Who knows, folks? But whatever's going to happen, it's going to be weird. Let us know what you think and what you expect to see at E3 for 2020.